Good evening and welcome to the September 8th, 2021 work session of the Penfield Town Board. I'll officially call this meeting to order. I'll ask everyone in the auditorium to please rise for the pledge. Thank you.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. I'll ask our Deputy Town Clerk, please call the roll.
Draw. Here. Cole. Here. LaFountain.
Present.
Moore.
Here.
Hockenhead.
Here.
All present.
All right, thank you. Next order of business is the minutes. We do have the August 25th, 2021 minutes before us, and I'd ask the board for any consideration or approval of those minutes.
I'll move those, Mr. Supervisor.
Second. Moved by Councilperson Draw, second by Councilperson Hockenhead. Further discussion on the minutes? Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote of approval.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole. Aye. LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Hockenhead. Five ayes.
All right, we have monthly reports due at the end of the week. We're a little late this month thus far, so I would encourage our department heads, for those that have gotten thank you. For those that are a little late, thank you for being able to see those by the end of the week. So thank you for that. There are no public hearings this evening. We do have one guest this evening. We have Rudy Neufeld for a discussion request requesting rezoning at 1345 Shoecraft Road. And I recognize Mr. Costello. Any additional comments on this matter?
Thank you. Mr. Neufeld appeared before the Comprehensive Plan Update Committee, I believe on August 10th, discuss a proposal that he has, which would require a rezoning to allow him to do what he'd like to do. I'm going to let him elaborate on that in a moment. The committee, after discussing the matter with him, did recommend, and certainly that will be in the famous letter I'm putting together for you with all these rezoning requests. They did recommend that rezoning be considered by the town board if it felt that Mr. Neufeld's project merited such consideration. So with that, Rudy, I'm going to let you talk about what you'd like to do on the side.
Welcome, Mr. Neufeld. If you're comfortable, you can remove your mask if you're moving around. We can see your smiling face, and would love to hear your thoughts and ideas that you have at 1345 Shoecraft Road.
Very good. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen of the board, and I would have to extend a thank you to the other board. I'd never met with them before, but that was a pleasure a few weeks back to get their thoughts and answer their questions. So that was new, but that was nice. So this piece of property is interesting. I won't get too much history, but Gasbury family, they've had that for a number of years. They were masons. I remember when I was a little kid, they worked with my dad. They were masons too. Anyway, they bought this property, I think in the late 80s, and it was going to be the family compound for them. Well, now they're up in their mid-80s, and it just isn't working anymore. So it's a beautiful little piece. I've had a chance to walk it, look at it, and we thought that the rezoning was appropriate for several reasons. Everything surrounding us is the half-acre zoning. And we proposed something interesting. I did I will call it a dummy sketch, so we didn't get to the level of BME, but we sketched out what we think, and we fell in love with the, you may be familiar with the 250 project, Barclay Park. That's 3.5 acres, and there's 24 townhomes there, 12 buildings, and that was on 6.5 acres. This is 14, and we thought that would be a nice fit. We did also look at doing a traditional single-family residence, which could be nice, like similar to across the street. The issue was to do that and comply with everything that engineering would need, we basically would have to denude that 14 acres, which is not a horrible thing, but it is a pretty woods. So we thought if we could tuck another townhome project in, we would be able to leave a 20 to 30 foot tree buffer all the way around, maintain some of that green space, And then we had, this was my idea, kind of my dream, to put a little greenhouse. Now, Jim, am I calling that the right name, the greenhouse thing that you guys are familiar
Well,
with?
for the board's reference, the greenhouse is what St. John's built over on
Fellows
Hudson
Road.
Yeah, Fellows Road, yes, in conjunction with the townhouse project.
So before Rudy, you go any further, I'm going to ask the driver tonight if he would take his mouse and then just run that around that piece of parcel so that everybody is on the same page, and give everybody that same reference point.
So this State Road, Shoecraft Road, and then Plank Road on the south. Excuse me, so I try to kind of highlight it in the light blue color, and then also have the zoning on in the green, so you can see there's a little leg behind the fire hall. It's kind of in that triangular wedge. There's a couple of parcels on the State Road side. There's obviously frontage homes on the Shoecraft Road side. And then if the computer works with me, obviously frontage homes along that Plank Road side. So the gray shading is the half-acre R120 existing zoning. The green is the RR1 or 1-acre zoning that's on the property right now. And I can zoom out a little bit just so you can kind of see the extents. And as the computer catches up, you can see the limits of where the zoning goes.
While he's looking at that, just for the board's information, those properties up until 2010, I believe, were pre-existing non-conforming lots in the RR1 district, the 1-acre district, which is green. One of the recommendations in that comprehensive plan update was that those properties be rezoned to R120 because they are R120's designed lots. They were having to come in for all sorts of variances, all sorts of pre-existing nonconformance discussions with the boards because they couldn't meet that 1-acre requirement. So from 1981 until about 2010, those were zoned RR1.
All right, thank you for that. Sorry, Mr. Neufeld, I just wanted to make sure everybody on the same page. I've had the benefit of at least seeing this parcel and having a brief conversation, Mr. Costello and I, with Mr. Neufeld a few weeks ago, and so I just want to make sure everybody was on the same page. So with that, the floor is yours to continue. I think you left off at the greenhouse concept.
Oh, yes, and if I'm giving too
Not
much,
raising plants, but taking care of old guys like you and I.
well, there may be an ulterior motive to our greenhouse, Mr. LaFountain, but we'll get to that later. And if I'm giving too much or too little information, board members, please stop me at any time. So coming in the little stub road right where the arrow is off of Shoecraft there, yep, the townhomes would come in there and be positioned lengthy along the back of those houses that are existing, and we would be able to keep somewhere between a 20 and 30-foot buffer just untouched. We're recommending that the property be an HOA for our own purposes. What that allows us to do is leave wooded buffers, deal with drainage internally, not have to clear the property per all the codes that would require, and we could leave a property pretty much with a green buffer all the way around. We did provide some photos. Mark, I don't know if you have them here. To kind of get a view, I took a view from all the neighbors from the existing properties, what they would look like, what the trees look like if the board hadn't bought it. It's not necessary, Mark, if you don't have those photos, but it was important to me to see what the neighbors would see. Now, I'm not being negative to a regular conventional neighborhood. It could work there, and we could do a nice job with it, but that would mean families and swing sets, and we would literally have to take the vegetation down to their property line. So for me, if I was a resident, I think I would be much happier with the whole townhouse concept and the HOAs, which would leave me a green buffer. We have not done it yet. I didn't want to put the cart before the horse, but if the board feels good about this, we will then go to the neighbors, regardless of where the zoning is. And what we do, we always invite all the neighbors to a meeting, let them know what we're thinking, get their concerns, their thoughts. So we certainly would do that here too. And then if you look at the little square, that's owned, I don't remember the lady's name. She owns a house in a little empty lot there, and then just to the east of her is, it's maybe 2 acres, give or take. And what I liked about that spot, often these greenhouses or senior living facilities, they're either near a highway, on a highway, in an open field. This would tuck into a beautiful little wood, so whether it's me or whoever it is that's there, really would have a beautiful little environment to have a little place to live. So I just thought that fit nicely in there, and so that was my idea.
So Rudy, you're looking at the use of Town Law 278 to cluster the units to get to the density that you're looking for?
Correct.
In terms of townhouse versus single-family detached?
Yep, and just for perspective, so on not that it matters to this discussion, but the townhouse project at Barclay was on 6.8 acres, and that was 24 units. This is 14 acres, and it would be, the way it lays out, probably somewhere in that 24, so it'd be a lot less density, but there's really not room to get more than that in and be comfortable with leaving my buffer. So that's what I'm thinking. It would be somewhere between 24 and 28 units. Once the experts get to it, that would define the final number, plus the little greenhouse property. Now, there's a possibility that if ever there was more land to be purchased, which I don't know that there is, that greenhouse concept might expand a little bit depending on what the future holds.
Okay. Board? Thoughts, comments?
Mr. Neufeld?
Yeah, Rudy.
Question, Rudy. I have a question for you. On the property on River Birch, the Barclay property,
Yep.
how much buffer do you have on those? Because I've been in there quite a bit.
About 20 feet.
You do? Okay, that's a
It
nice
was a
buffer.
little tighter. That property was a little tighter, so there was, in fact, I had photographs. We did photograph all of that, so we could certainly provide it for the board if they'd like it. And there's about 20 feet all the way around. And in the winter, of course, you do see some, but in the summer, it's just a beautiful little
It is.
green.
You have a
green-
nice buffer
and
around.
this would provide me at least that much, or even 30 to 40 feet of buffer, just because I have more room. And we only need, those buyers don't want a huge backyard. So it just laid out really nicely. I did have a pencil layout. I don't know, Mark, if you have that or not. That might be good for visuals, but that's filled up more now. But so this is a little narrower than the other one, so there's just more opportunity to have green space.
And can I just ask you one question on your HOA? Once your total build-out is done, then the HOA becomes part of the homeowners association. The homeowners take over that.
They
Is that
own it.
correct?
Yeah, the way it is, it's a 60%, and that's what the law requires. So when 60% is done, we then offer to our neighbors, if they would like to manage it, yeah, we're okay managing it, then we give it to them, and they take care of the whole thing. If they say, no, we'd like you to handle it till you're done, then we do it. But then it's an HOA thing. They plow their road, they take care of the entrance signage and whatever there is. There's going to be a little retention pond. So the HOA has a fund to clean that if necessary, mow the grass. They really are directing their own neighborhood. If they say, we only want to cut the grass once every 3 weeks, that's fine. But it's worked out really well, and everybody's happy with it. And it just allows us to do so many more things to save greenery when it's an HOA.
Thank you.
You're
Yes,
welcome.
thank you.
Mark, could we go back to the site, please?
Sure.
Rudy, what's the condition of that 30-foot buffer as far as the trees that are there, and hopefully not a lot of ash? And,
You know, I did look not specifically with the number of ash. I will do that, but that we have no control over. What we would do, if there is ash trees, which there probably are some, we would maintain the dead stuff, and that's it. And then the HOA, they have the right to do plantings, put rhododendrons, woodland garden plants, but they cannot denude the property, can't cut down trees. And the HOA is much stronger. If I sell a house to you and there's a little 20-foot buffer, but it's your property and it's just a restricted area, it tends to want to be played with. With the HOA, it's a legal issue, and we just haven't had an issue with it. So I'm comfortable when I stand before all those neighbors and say, when I'm living in the greenhouse, you still will have a buffer that we'll both be looking at.
And is it just the one entrance off of Shoecraft? There's no other exit or entrance off the property?
Well, there is over here by the fire hall, but that's a busier traffic area. You got it coming down to the south right there. Close to the intersection, that wouldn't make any sense for us to use that. We liked, for lots of reasons, the Shoecraft entrance is
But
quite
so
a
just
road.
one, there's only going to be the
There'll
one?
be one? Oh, yes, I'm sorry, I didn't hear.
One for the townhomes, and then potentially if the green
Correct, that will
home
come off
goes,
of
that will
State
come
Road.
off and
Yeah, they wouldn't connect, the two developments wouldn't connect.
So the reason I asked to call that back up, could you give us a sense of where the stormwater management pond might be located on this property, being obviously the lowest spot?
I can. Martin Yondo, who many of you may or may not know personally, who I think is phenomenal on the wetlands. It would be down near the fire hall is the lowest point, right about where Mark is right now. The size of it, I'm not exactly sure. The experts would define that, but it's the wettest area is right behind the fire hall's property, so whether we take some of their drainage, but we're seeing it right about where Mark is pointing now in that area. That's the lowest basin.
Okay, all right. Board, other comments for the applicant?
No, I think this sounds very appropriate, and what Jim's comments about the last master plan, this is sort of consistent to what they were looking for. No.
Tony, is the next step on this where Rudy would invite the neighbors along that corridor to a meeting and show them what he's proposing to do, what his ideas are, not only with townhomes, but retention pond, because I think some neighbors would want to know if the retention pond's near their house or not, the greenhouse facility, and then we would get some type of a report on how that meeting went before we made any decisions at that point?
Well, that's one approach. The board could say that we'd like to hold a public hearing to get more additional input. You know, what I think we've seen from Mr. Neufeld in the past is that before he's embarked on spending a lot of money engineering and legal-wise to hold a session with neighbors to get a sense of, you know, what their concerns are. But then a next step would be for a formal public hearing before the board for a proposed rezoning.
I would move that we take this to a public hearing.
I'd second that.
Okay. It's been moved and seconded to move by Councilperson Cole, seconded by Councilperson Moore, to have the applicant take maybe a couple of steps, because one of the items that certainly this board would be looking for as part of the public hearing for those that may not be able to attend would be any thoughts, input that they might have. But to move forward with a formal hearing, working with staff to set a public hearing for sometime here over the next couple of months, and open it up for all residents to weigh in. All right?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a motion on the table. Second, seeing any further discussion? Before I do that, I'll just ask, as I always do, staff, is there anything that we have not discussed or was not part of the record that we believe should be added to the record this evening?
No, I think you've done fine. I would recommend in this particular case, especially if he's going to go to the neighbors, sometimes we don't see that, but he does do that on a regular basis. And I know you're always intent on not spending a lot of money early on, but it might be to everybody's advantage if he did at least just a sketch plan with BME, who I think is doing the work for him, to at least give the neighbors an idea of what it is he's proposing and how it does lay out as it relates to their properties.
Okay. Something more than a hand sketch is what
Yeah.
you're saying.
Yeah. So
All right.
something else other than that?
And I think this town board would certainly need something to look at, too.
Even if
Other,
it's overlaid on the aerial photo or something like that, I think he can work with
Yeah.
BME to take his sketch and at least delay it over
Yeah.
property lines, so at least,
We have the napkin, we need more than that.
as the supervisor shared, most people are going to want to look and say, where's my house and what's behind me? Laying it over an aerial photo at least gives you a better sense of, okay, what am I looking outside the back door? Do I have the pond? Do I have the greenhouse? You know, what my potential view might be out of my backyard.
so Jim, just so we're clear, this property is already currently zoned residential.
It's zoned RR1, yes. It's a
Correct.
1
So,
acre
so
zoning district.
a developer or builder could come in, could knock down all the trees, could put in 1 acre parcels if they wanted to, and build homes all in that area
Well, what
because
they
of its
could
current
do is they
zoning.
could do just what you stated, but they could also use Town Law 278 and then cluster them into an area for smaller lots, but you
Right.
can only have that number, I think it's 14 or less than
Yeah.
14, something of that
But to
nature.
your point, yes, it's zone residential today. If someone came in with a 1 acre application, it would go directly to the planning board, go through site plan approvals. There's nothing that prevents it
There's
from
no
being-
forever wild, there's no
There's nothing preventing it from
conservation
being developed.
easement, there's nothing like that on this
Not on this
parcel.
property,
No
no.
border,
Okay.
there's no 20, 30-foot border.
Well, and that's kind of, I mean, I just want to lay everything out on the
Positive
table and make sure everybody's got a clear understanding. This isn't parkland, this isn't a conservation easement deeded land, that there is currently zoned residential development.
Mark's going to Scribner Road, and this is a situation that occurred there a couple of years ago where the developer proposed to put in townhouse development on a private drive. The neighbors were not supportive of it, and as a result, he did build 10, or I think, is it 10 or 12 houses on the site. And you can see the house, you know, the property was basically denuded at that point in time. His intent was to try and preserve as much of it as he could, but he can't do it with single-family detached housing.
They still use Town Law 278, so on this, and unfortunately, Google doesn't show the new development. The property goes further, so they were able to at least consolidate the development on part of it, left part of it, untouched. But the remainder of it, they kind of cleared to make room for a dedicated road and houses and everything else. So they did consolidate it a bit, but it wasn't as compact as a development as it might have been if it was possibly a townhouse development, and they came in originally to preserve a little bit more of those buffers, so.
Well, and I think the reason why I raise this point is just so that people have a full understanding of what the options or potentials are. Mr. Neufeld, to this point, is offering something that potentially isn't clear-cutting the entire land, is leaving a significant buffer, versus somebody coming in and just demolishing all the trees.
And the other part of that, too, is people don't understand this, if he goes to townhouses, he can't have any more units than he would if he had single-family detached housing. He's stuck with that number.
Yep, no, I just wanted to make sure that everything was out in the open so everybody understands the situation and what the different potential options could or could not be. Thank you.
Okay. Seeing no further discussion, the motion's on the table to move this to a formal public hearing. I'd ask for a roll call vote of approval for that.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Neufeld. Great to see you. We'll see you in some number of weeks.
2 weeks. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the
All right.
board and staff. Appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll move on to action items. The first item is a discussion regarding allowing vendors to operate within town parks. I have the action item on that, and I'll be looking for staff for any additional comments. Essentially, the reason this is on the agenda is we did have a resident that asked to set up a hot dog cart at LaSalle's Landing. And one of the things that Mr. Costello, myself, and Mr. Horwitz discussed is that just because there is an interest to do that doesn't mean that that's an automatic approval to do that. In fact, what the discussion that we had is that we would have to go, if this board desired to have food vendors, food trucks, hot dog carts, or other types of food venues, that we would have to put it out to some formal type of a request, bidding process per se, if you will. And we wanted to put that on the agenda to see what the board's interest and appetite might be to modify the ordinance to allow that to happen, to issue a permit to make sure that if in fact we were to do that, all the proper rules, regulations, health department, all of those types of things, and then to set some criteria to say that, is it one food vendor per location or per town property? Is it multiple? And what is that process? Or is that not anything the board would like to entertain in any way, shape, or form?
So right now, we have itinerant vendors. They go on private property, and it goes before the zoning board for approval. So this would be a itinerant vendor going to a public land, and whether we want to pursue that or not.
Right.
Okay.
And so if you have two applications, if you have two vendors that come in, one selling hot dogs, one selling hamburgers, do you allow one or the other or both? Or do you open it up more broadly to those food vendors? Or is it a first come, first serve?
Yeah. I don't know. I think we'd have to talk about that at a little more length, the pros and the cons. Legally, the insurance and what, on public lands, do we want somebody that is itinerant vendor on a public land that's not part of a festival or something that we're already overseeing? You kind of have a disconnect, wouldn't you, for the, I don't know. I mean, just listening to it, for just hearing about it, I'd say no.
Yeah, and actually, we should have probably had this more as a information item, but at some point, we would have to move it to an action item to talk about what, if any, next steps that we would like to take. Is there any interest? First of all, is there any interest, yes or no? If the answer is yes, then the next discussion would be, what do we need to do, or what criteria would we put together in some type of a local law, and then put that forth for a formal public hearing, adoption, and then from there, then what would the process be? And that might be part of the local law. What would the process be for selection of? Is it a first come, first serve? I came to LaSalle's Landing, and I was the first one to ask the board, so therefore I am the person that can set up, versus Harris Whalen Park, do the same thing, and so on. So thoughts, other thoughts, some next steps?
I agree with Councilwoman Cole. This probably requires a little more in-depth discussion and review of that, rather than something to make a quick decision tonight.
Yeah, and Tony, I think the last thing that we would want to do is bog down a town staff person with micromanaging who's where, who's got, first dibs at what, when, and where. So I think we do need to think about it a little bit more so it doesn't become more complicated than what it needs to be, and doesn't require a town staff member to have to sit there and manage a program, on a regular basis. I don't think that's fair to the staff.
Shannon, so.
I was already thinking that. I was like,
Well, since she's volunteered, it changes my perspective then.
At least she's here tonight to defend herself.
So, yeah, I'm not opposed to the idea in some form. I certainly understand liabilities and insurances as any municipality or government entity has to take into account on any and all decisions that we deal with. But, I do think that it provides a level of service to residents that are in our, park systems or in a town-owned land, and it, has some ability to support some level of economic entrepreneurship to some extent, which is a good thing. So I'm not necessarily against it. I just think that we need to look through some of these liability issues, insurance issues, and overall management issues. But I think we can get through that in the near future.
Okay. So next step for, I'm assuming, Mr. Costello and I, maybe Shannon as well, to set with Mr. Horowitz, maybe do a little bit of legwork as far as those items that we might have to take into consideration. Bring that back to the board in a few weeks and present that back to the board for any additional discussion, comments?
Yeah, and certainly Shannon can put on a PowerPoint presentation for us.
Perfect.
Minimum 2 hours.
All right, so would entertain a motion to hold this matter for some number of weeks until we're able to gather that.
Moved.
Second.
Okay, moved by Councilperson Moore, second by Councilperson Cole. It'll be shown as a held item upon additional review, fact gathering by staff and town attorney. Further discussion? Seeing none, I'd ask for a roll call vote to hold this matter.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, we'll move on to our next action item, 2070 Empire Boulevard Sidewalk Waiver Request. And I'll recognize Mr. Valentine.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. So up on the screen, I've got 2070 Empire Boulevard, former Perkins, former Bill Gray's, former, a lot of things. Not Bill Gray's.
Tom Walls.
Tom Walls, thank you. Now, it is before the planning board to be a new urgent care facility. So they're looking to use the same footprint, similar pavement area. They've been before the board, have gotten their approvals. They'll be starting shortly on the urgent care. One of the items, though, that it tripped was our sidewalk policy. So it does have sidewalks along Empire Boulevard, but as I highlight 2070, and let me highlight it in the corner so you can see it. As I highlight 2070, this one, if you can see the blue line, they actually own frontage along Seabury Boulevard as well. So currently we don't have sidewalks along Seabury Boulevard. They do own some property behind that, but there's also interest, and they've been talking with RG&E. RG&E, and I'll pull up their map. So similar orientation, Empire Boulevard, Seabury Boulevard. This is the new urgent care, the same pavement you saw before. RG&E has some constraints at their existing facility on Empire Boulevard just across the street. So they're looking to possibly expand and may relocate to this area over here. They don't have a plan yet. They just put something on the map. But as part of our sidewalk waiver, one, don't know how the house, or excuse me, the building and or parking may lay out. So they're just actually asking for kind of a stay of the sidewalk waiver policy. I said that's not something that staff can grant, that comes through this board. So they're basically saying, we understand that the sidewalk policy exists. We are just asking to basically be put in abeyance until such time that we figure out what or where RG&E needs to go, then come back before the board and one, grant the easement, you know, and or install the sidewalk, pay the waiver fee or anything else. So right now, they're not in compliance with our sidewalk policy. They have to come before this board. So I put it in as a waiver, but they're more asking for, can we just hold off, whether we want to put a 1 year, maybe timeline, because if RG&E goes out forever, so maybe I offer up to the board 1 year from now, or whenever RG&E comes in, we'll kind of trip that reapproval process, come back before this board, look at it with RG&E on there and say, okay, yes, the sidewalk makes sense. No, it doesn't. Pay the waiver fee, the easement's in the way of something. So basically right now they're just saying, can we hold off, compliance with that one condition of the planning board condition right now. And I think we should have a timeline on that, just so it's not a forever, but, see where we're at a year from now and then bring it back before this board.
Is that what your idea is from the PRC?
Yeah, it was the thought, just to kind of have an end date to it, just so it's not a forever, because
Right.
obviously if you leave it as such, then I'll
Mark, is a
forget.
year, excuse me, is a year about, have we done that before? We've left something open about that long?
I'm just thinking, with RG&E, I don't know their exact time frame. I'm thinking they may be in the next 6 months. I know they've got some stuff to work out. Obviously, the DeMarco Group is looking to move ahead with their urgent care. They're looking to get that up this fall, get that constructed. So obviously their focus is on that right now. But to their credit, they kind of said, hey, let's, full disclosure, we're looking at this back end of the piece here and, what that impact may be. So it's up to the board and what your thoughts and time frame. I don't think we need to keep it as a held item on the agenda for that long, but we can just write a letter back to them, and then I'll add it to my particular file that a year from now, we'll see where we're at, or we may be here before that with RG&E coming in with an application and can revisit it.
Okay.
So to give the board a sense, it was October 6th of 2020 when RG&E first approached the town to talk about this particular substation. So while electricity moves quicker through the line, building a new substation doesn't appear to be that quick. So if we hold it for a year, put it as a tickler, as Mr. Valentine is indicating, but making sure that the DeMarco Group are not off the hook for that.
Right.
Just we're doing a little stay here until such time as everything gets sorted out.
Yeah, I concur, Mr. Supervisor. I don't think it does anybody any good, nor does it make any sense to have someone build a sidewalk only a year from now or 2 years from now, just end up ripping it up. So I think 1 year is sufficient.
All right, sounds like a motion, Mr. Moore?
That is a motion, correct.
Second.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Councilperson Moore, second by Councilperson Cole. This will be directing Mr. Valentine and his team to write a letter back to the DeMarco, and specifically Paul Colucci as the author of the letter, and to have this held in abeyance for the next year or until such time as RG&E makes more firm plans for that area. All right, seeing no further discussion, I'd ask for a roll call vote of approval on that.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, what we all been waiting for. The next item is a request for hold harmless agreement at 44 Brass Castle. And Shannon has the honors on this item.
Thank you. So I was approached last week by the Fire Marshal, Jeff David. He did the site inspection for the pool at 44 Brass Castle. We received the permit application for it, and he followed up with the site inspection. He spoke to the homeowner about where the fence will be, and it is proposed to be within the easement. So Chris Porter, I've been in contact with him, the homeowner, about having a portion of the fence within the storm sewer easement. They want to do that to maximize the amount of space that the pool area will be fenced in. As you can see on the map there, the fence would be where the red line is. The pool is in blue, obviously, and then the yellow is the portion of the easement that the fence will be located within. Jeff took a couple of photos when he was doing the site inspection, and it doesn't appear that it would cause any drainage issues. And the fence itself, if I'm not mistaken, won't sit directly on the ground. There will be a couple inches between the ground and the fence to allow for drainage as well.
And have we looked to see where the pipe is? The pipe roughly in the center of the easement, or is it offset at all? Because one of the things that we always get concerned about is that there's going to be some number of poles. We want to make sure that those poles don't make that a perforated pipe that we have to deal with, or Mr. Tate has to deal with down the road. I would just say that.
Looks like the main goes down the property line, so I think our recommendation would be to slightly offset it, just so
Right.
We're not directly into it.
Yep.
As this site photo shows here, you can see the end section actually of the pipe, so we know it's pretty shallow.
Sure.
You can see the end section picking up the drainage in the swale, so I think if we offset it 2 or 3 feet, just inside of that, you're not directly over it. If they're anywhere near it or on top of it, we've asked in the past that people hand dig those as well. So if the pipe does differ a little bit off center line, you should be able to stake pretty well if you've got both ends, where this end is, and find the basin or the manhole on the other end. You can run a string line and know where you are, but if offset that a couple of feet, just so we're not drilling through the top of the pipe.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
Board?
sorry, I forgot to mention, Mr. Porter is here tonight.
Mr. Porter, welcome. Good to see you. Thank you for being here. Board, other questions or comments on this matter?
It seems pretty straightforward, Mr. Supervisor. I would think that we could grant that easement.
Okay.
I would move that,
Is that a motion?
yes, I would like
All
to
right.
move that. Thank you, Shannon.
Thank you.
Moved by Councilperson Draw. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilperson Ockenden. This will be granted, subject to having the fence offset so it's not over the pipe, and then filling out the proper paperwork that will ultimately be filed. And I think the property owner, hopefully the property owner has been made aware that if, in that unlikely event that Mr. Tate comes in with the big equipment and has to do some digging, that it would be the responsibility of the property owner for that fence or replacement of that fence and not the town.
Yes, they have been made aware.
Okay, great. Seeing no further comments, board or staff? Okay, Shannon, thank you. Then I'd ask for a roll call vote of approval, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, good luck. Enjoy the pool. Hopefully that the pool season lasts a lot longer than it normally does.
I just want to hit the ground before the end of this. Before it snows, I'll be happy.
Amen, amen. Good luck.
Thank you so much.
All right, thank you for
Invite us.
coming in. All right, so we'll get on to some unusual items on the agenda. We'll move on to item D. This is a tree removal at Greenwood Park. Mr. Tate.
Thank you. So this, I guess, item actually came in, my understanding is that one of the residents or visitors within Greenwood Park approached our Parks Department as they were kind of out doing work. If Mark, if you don't mind pulling the park up, it's in the kind of the little, do you mind pulling the GIS view of that up?
Yeah, I'll get that.
Get a chance. So there are a few trees within that, this being kind of a crabapple with, not a single leaf on it. As our, there's a few, pines that are shedding a lot more needles than they're growing within kind of a small, triangular clump in one point of that. The request, based on the unsightliness of these trees and the fact that they're only going to get worse by the kind of the visitor within that park, was to have them taken down. It's actually in that little finger on the west side, closest to the end where Mark's showing. So it's not by the actual playing fields, but it's kind of right in that chunk along there. With that said,
In between houses on either side.
correct.
Okay.
The it's right that kind of bottom portion.
How many,
Not those, but up kind of yes.
how many trees are we looking at?
So it's the, I believe, the one crabapple and then these 3 pines that are kind of in a triangular shape garden bed together.
The reason that we're not mowing in between those is,
I believe there's some rocks growing up in between, as you see through other portions of the park. But I think with the intent that if those trees were taken down, we would actually grind those stumps, relocate that rock, and turn that area to grass.
so that it was a complete easy mow through
Correct.
that.
It'd make it easier for mowing, it'd make it easier for people, giving them a little more open green space back there to enjoy as well.
All right, so you had a park goer that brought it to your attention. Have we had any conversations with neighbors?
I'm not positive if Tim has been able to get a hold of him. I know he was trying to reach out. I know he's been back there taking a look at him, and no one has come back to, talk to him or question what, is going to take place. Certainly you want to reach out to the closest homeowners and make sure that they're aware before anything happens.
So that Debbie Draw does not get any phone calls from neighbors that were cutting trees down?
Correct.
So, okay. All right.
Can I ask a question, Mr.
Absolutely.
Supervisor? So can you go back to that tree, that crabapple tree, the picture of that?
Yep.
Is that a shovel behind it? In that, right there? Like, or
I think that's just a limb that's growing out
Oh, a
of
limb,
one
okay.
of the,
It looks like
the other.
pile of rocks here, and it looks like just
Yeah.
a
more of
limb or
a
a,
small sapling growing out of that.
did look like a
flower.
So
shovel head or something.
the request from the resident was for that crabapple plus all the pine trees, everything to be gone?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. So thoughts? You want to take a look at it, come back with a report?
Well, Eric, you seem to think it's appropriate. You're good for that.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to, make the park as, nice and enjoyable as possible.
Right.
Certainly, if we can help improve the aesthetics of what's currently there and make it, a little nicer rather than, those trees, being bare or potentially coming down and
Hitting
falling on someone or injuring someone that's walking through the park at any given time.
Yeah.
I think that would be the most appropriate thing to do.
Okay.
Yeah, Mr. Supervisor, I would just ask that Eric or Tim or somebody reach out to the closest neighbor so they're aware of that.
Exactly.
And it just prevents any panic or something that, someone's just chopping down trees when that's not necessarily the case.
Yep, we would
Just so
certainly do
they're
that.
aware of it. And that's fine.
Eric, would that be something you can do, your crew can do this work?
Yes.
All of it?
So with the blessing of the neighbors, you'd clean everything up, put it to grass, and one less thing to mow around.
Correct.
And more importantly, less branches falling on a resident and serving us with papers.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
I'll second that.
Okay, moved by Councilperson Moore, seconded by Councilperson Draw, that we would look to remove those 4 trees, three pines in the triangle and a crab tree, and prior to removal, review by the closest neighbors. Okay, so we'll move to seconded, seeing no further discussion. I'd ask for a roll call vote of approval.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, we'll move on to item E, tree removal, 23 Fallbrook Circle.
So similar.
Tate again.
So similar to the last one, have another request from the, from a resident. This one's actually the adjacent resident to that. They back up to, a portion of town property. Unfortunately, there are some dead ash trees kind of behind their rear property line on the town property that they've got some concerns over.
Not a few, but probably 80% of the trees back there are dead.
There's quite a few.
Yeah.
There fortunately are more than just ash back there. There are live trees. As you can see, you do see some, quite a bit of vegetation and growth on some of the smaller ones. However, that tree in particular, as well as those 3 there, are not in the best of health. They are all ash trees and only going to get worse. With that said, that property owner did contact us, do have kind of the written release acknowledgement from them, understanding that, if approved, we would cut down the dead ash trees, that are on town property right now. The debris would be left on site. It'd be kind of tucked into the woods, and it needs as neat a pile as possible, and that we would not be grinding the stumps or replanting any trees. She signed that, acknowledging and agreeable to that.
And it's directly behind her house.
Correct.
Got it. All right.
We
Board?
had, just for kind of the board's knowledge, we have been doing, there have been other trees up and down that, road in particular that we've
It's
been.
not the first time we've had the discussion in this neighborhood.
Correct. We've been dealing with these, up and down the road, one by one over the past few years.
Okay. Board thoughts, questions, concerns?
So Eric, can I ask this? If those trees fell, would they fall on her property? Or would
Yes.
it definitely would?
They would definitely fall on her property. Some of them would likely hit the house.
Okay. That's my answer. Good answer.
All right. Are there any other questions or comments?
Just a quick question. Mark, the town owns what land back there?
This
Can
is
you just
our-
point that out?
This 2640, it's kind of hard one. So this is our portion, and we've got a couple other pieces in and around that.
And that's
neighborhood.
between Fallbrook and Treebrook,
Yep.
right? Okay.
So I zoom out, we also own this piece in the back. 40 is a swath kind of between there and that Scribner Road property. We own, that's tied to this piece, and then we own this piece in between, and then this goes out ultimately
Right.
to the pond that's on
Yep.
Atlantic Avenue.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Okay. Further questions, comments?
I think I'll make a motion,
All
Mr.
right.
Supervisor, we
You
approve.
You made that motion?
Should I make that motion?
I think you should.
I think I should. That we have Mr. Tate has done a splendid job of putting together a proposal there from the resident, and he gets rid of those trees for us.
And my guess is that's going to be done by other than town staff.
That is correct.
All right. There's a motion on the table. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Ockenden. Seeing no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Draw.
Aye.
Cole.
Aye.
LaFountain.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Ockenden.
Aye.
5 ayes.
All right, we'll move on to information items. First item, Matt Lester, Burger King architectural changes at 2146 Fairport 9 Mile Point Road. Mr. Costello, do you have any good news for us?
I do. Thank you very much. As you know, Mr. Lester and his representatives had met with the board in 2 previous work sessions requesting a modification to the structure, the Burger King structure that you approved last year. I think the board recognized the fact that they liked the original design better than they did the one that was being proposed. I think at the last meeting you did recommend to him that you would look at any future changes if they wanted to bring some in, other than what they are proposing. And I received an email from them shortly after your meeting with them last week, noting that they are no longer interested in asking for a request of modification for the building. They are going to move forward with the original pavilion plan as proposed and approved, and wanted the board to be assured that they knew that that was the case. And I just wanted to bring that to the board's attention and the public's, because I do know that there were some neighbors that were watching the process as well. So they are going back to the original proposal.
All right. So because it's the original proposal, there's really no action for us this evening. This is just bringing this, memorializing it before the board and for our minutes, that it'll reflect that this matter has been withdrawn by the applicant, and the applicant will build the facility as was originally approved.
That's right.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Costello. You get the gold star tonight. We'll move on to item B. This is an updated Little League softball facility improvements, Veterans Memorial Park. Mr. Valentine and Mr. O'Connor, who is not with us but has spent quite a bit of time making sure he's flushed out the details on this.
Yeah, so we brought this to the board a little while ago. The one item we were waiting for was the fence. Thankfully, that number has come in much lower than what it was. What they had originally quoted us was the double high fence for like an outfield for the Little League piece. So that number's come down. So last time we were over 700,000, we're down to 570, so it's come down quite a bit. It's still not cheap. But as you said, Mike O'Connor's been working with Tim Masterton. Mike's watching tonight. I could have him call in if we need any more additional assistance on this. But he did let me speak in his absence. So,
And considering he's got 1 foot in the pickup and 1 foot in the house and a wife who's moments away from delivering, we won't bother him tonight.
well, not Mike O'Connor, but Tim
Oh,
Masterton.
Mike, yes, sorry. I heard.
I don't think Mike's
Tim-
wife's expecting,
I heard
but-
Tim Masterton, yes.
But
Tim's wife is-
you don't know. So yeah, both of them have provided the numbers. So as indicated a couple of weeks ago, we said we'd bring this back to the board, refine that number and bring you back, updated costs on that. So it's, again, more of an FYI. It's under an informational item this evening, not, no further action by the board, but did want to make you aware of that and update you on those new numbers.
No, we appreciate that, Mark. I guess before I make any comments, any questions for Mark on this at this point? So certainly, one of the things that the board, is looking at is the 2022 budget. We also review and keep current our capital improvement plan, which this is now listed on the capital improvement plan as well. And as we go through the board, as the board understands, we have a lot of competing interests for a limited pot of money. However, the board will continue to review this and take into considerations things like the lower estimate. We'll also take into account potential phasing or opportunities for phasing, as well as other projects that might be on the table for consideration. So any additional questions, comments for Mark and his team? Any additional information that the board would like to see as we continue to have this conversation?
Nope.
All right, Mark, thank you, and Mike, and tell Mike's wife, I apologize. And the board will continue to review this as part of our overall 2022 budget and our capital improvement plan. Okay. There being no further business to come before the board this evening, the September 8th, 2021 work session will stand adjourned at 7:57 p.m. Thank you for everyone that participated. Thank you to staff. Thank you to PCTV, Ryan and Dave downstairs, bringing this to you live. Be well and be safe. Have a great evening.